General Natinchuk confirmed that in June 2006, at least one detainee handed over by the Canadian forces suffered abuse in Afghanistan. The military on the ground assisted the detainee. They acted as they should have. General Natinchuk acted as he should have. Now it's up to the government to take the appropriate action. It needs to launch a public and independent judicial inquiry. Why is it still refusing to do so? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, General Natinchuk has indicated what the government has said from the very outset. With respect to cases of abuse, Mr. Speaker, when there's evidence, the Canadian forces and our diplomats acted with the highest integrity, and they took the appropriate steps in this case. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, when General Natinchuk corrected his account this morning, he did so, he said, in order to restore trust in his office and in his institution. The issue here is trust. We can't trust this government. We can't trust a word that comes out of the mouth of this minister. When will the Prime Minister fire him and call a full, independent public inquiry?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Order.
Speaker, the facts of the case in question, of course, confirm what we have been saying all along, which is that when the Canadian forces, Mr. Speaker, see substantive evidence of any case of abuse, they have taken corrective action. That's what they did in this case, Mr. Speaker, and frankly, General Natinchuk today, correcting the record on a particular point, indicates once again that the Canadian forces from the highest level down to the man in the trenches act with the highest integrity at all times.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, General Natinchuk did the right thing. Our soldiers on the ground did the right thing. The issue is whether the government did the right thing. For a year, more than a year, they had credible reports from Canadian diplomats, from Canadian military, of abuse of detainees in Afghan prisons. They did nothing. Will they now admit that they made a mistake? There was a year when they did nothing. Will they appoint an independent judicial inquiry to get to the bottom of this affair? And will they fire this Minister of Defence?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Order. Mr. Speaker, as has been pointed out on numerous occasions over the period from 2006 to 2007, as we experienced some difficulties, the government, the forces, the Canadian diplomatic community took numerous actions to improve the situation, including, Mr. Speaker, rewriting all of the liberal transfer arrangements with the Afghan government in early 2007, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the only nothing here is that the opposition has had nothing new to ask about in 3 years.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver South. Order.
Mr. Speaker, General Natinchuk had the courage, the honour and the integrity to correct the record today as he discovered more information. A Canadian detainee captured, photographed, transferred to the Afghan National Police in June 2006. They knew torture had happened before. He was abused and retaken by our troops. Isn't it time the Prime Minister had the courage, the honour and the integrity of General Natinchuk and called a public inquiry?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
I agree with the honourable member's question. General Natinchuk, Walt Natinchuk, is an honourable man, and he did the right thing by correcting the record as he did this morning, Mr. Speaker. Clearly, I accept what he has said. Clearly, this House should accept what he has said. The CDS, the Chief of Defence Staff, has now called for a military board of investigation to look into this particular incident. Mr. Speaker, we continue to have faith in our CDS, in our members of the Canadian Forces, who continue to perform marvelously on the ground in Afghanistan, Mr. Speaker. We have confidence in what they do each and every day.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver Order, South. Order.
Mr. Speaker, General Tinchak acted honorably, admitted that he was not provided with a full account of Canadian detainee abuse in 2006. He wants answers. No one in this government, including the Prime Minister, seems to have the courage, the honor, the integrity, and the desire of General Tinchak to get at the truth. I dare them to prove me wrong. Why would they not call a public inquiry?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Speaker, as I've said before, as the Prime Minister has said, in this instance and in other instances, the actions of the Canadian Forces have been beyond reproach. Every time we've had credible allegations or evidence, Mr. Speaker, we've acted. We acted to improve the transfer arrangement, the inadequate arrangement left by the previous government. We've acted to improve the situation vis-a-vis human rights in Afghanistan. We've invested. We've mentored. We have the ability now to have unfettered access inside Afghan prisons, Mr. Speaker. All of that happened between 2006, 2007. We're in a better place today because of the actions of diplomats and soldiers, and we thank them and applaud them.
The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Order. Mr. Speaker, we have now found out that from the very beginning the Minister of Defence was covering up the truth regarding Afghan prisoners. The Army Chief of Defence Staff has confirmed that in May 2006 an Afghan prisoner was photographed before being handed over to the Afghan authorities because of the fear that he would be tortured. Will the Prime Minister stand behind his Defence Minister, or will he take responsibility and demand that he step down? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Contrary to what the Leader of the Bloc has said, Mr. Speaker, it's quite clear that the Canadian Forces acted appropriately in the context when there was evidence of well-founded allegations. The forces acted to correct the situation, and they've done that in all cases. And the comments from the Chief of Defence Staff today confirm that. The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Well, it's not the Canadian Forces that acted inappropriately, it's this government. The government used soldiers for purely partisan reasons. It has shown total contempt for soldiers, their families, the diplomatic corps and the members of the opposition. No one trusts this government anymore. Will the government do the only thing left to do and open a public inquiry in order to shed light on all of this affair? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's the opposition who's accusing our soldiers of committing war crimes, not this government. This government has defended, in all cases, our Canadian soldiers' actions, and the comments from the General Tinchak today indicate that the Canadian Forces acted appropriately in all cases. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to tell the Prime Minister that we're defending these soldiers and we are accusing him of covering up in this case, and he has left prisoners by the wayside. According to the facts put forward by the Chief of Defence Staff, Canada has known since 2006 that the Afghan detainees were tortured. The question is for the Prime Minister. We no longer trust the Minister of the Defence Minister. Will the Prime Minister admit that, in point of fact, Canada violated the Geneva Convention and that he has to call for his Defence Minister to stand down? The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
For incident, as I said before, we receive information, we act upon that information. In the case in question, the conduct of the Canadian Forces, which is the matter of this particular discussion, was beyond reproach. I've said it. I rely on information and advice from senior officials, from the military, Mr. Speaker. This issue came to my attention this morning after I spoke with General Tinchak. He immediately went on the record to correct the record, Mr. Speaker. He did the honourable thing. I accept what he has said today as the truth.